What is up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to another joint live stream on Show Me Football and KC Sports Report. My name is Josh Fann of ShowMeFootball.com and ArrowheadAddict.com, covering your Kansas City Chiefs. And this evening, I am joined by none other than Michael D'Arcy of KC Sports Report. And the Kansas City Chiefs, Michael, just got more great news in the AFC playoff picture as they just drew the Houston Texans in the divisional round of the AFC playoffs. That is who they will face next weekend, probably on Saturday. Michael, I think we both agree that the Houston Texans are probably the best realistic outcome that the Kansas City Chiefs could have gotten after Wild Card Weekend as far as their divisional opponent.
Oh, yeah. Listen, when you're looking at some of the other teams that, were in this bracket, the Chargers and the Broncos, I understand that they lost, and a couple of them, actually, they both got blown out. But facing a divisional opponent for the third time, that was never going to be an easy game. And none of these games are going to be easy. But I look at the Houston Texans as a team that is playing on borrowed time, is a team that, they did look good against the Chargers in the second half, but it's easy to look good against a team when they turn the ball over 4 times. When Justin Herbert throws 4 interceptions, you sack him 4 times. I mean, that's to be expected. And they also had a pick 6 in the game. So I do think that this is a fantastic matchup for this Chiefs team. Probably the best case scenario, I would say, for this team going into the divisional round. You got to win this game. You go to the AFC Championship game, and then you get to duke it out against either Buffalo or Baltimore, which is the best case scenario because, looking at some of the other ways that this weekend could have played out, there's a chance that you could have played the Broncos in this game or the Chargers in this game, but that would have meant that the Bills lost, which means that you would have had a, Ravens.
The Ravens easily make it to the AFC Championship.
Yeah, who would they play, though, if the Bills would have lost? It would have been Ravens-Texans. Like, that's a matchup that would not go very well for
They just smacked them a few weeks ago. And it was not even close.
No.
So, yeah, here's my feelings on it. I think this is the best realistic scenario. You could have gotten the Steelers, but they were never winning that game against the Baltimore Ravens. And if the Ravens were to lose to the Steelers, then you would have also wanted the Bills to lose to the Broncos. And it just felt super unlikely that both of those were going to happen because I think the best case scenario is that the Bills and the Ravens duke it out in the divisional round, and then you just get the winner of that game, but they will have exerted a bunch of energy trying to beat the other team in that game because those are both, the other juggernauts per se in the AFC. Steelers were never beating the Ravens, like I said. Russell Wilson's terrible. That team they didn't even look like they were trying on defense. And you get this Texans team that has been playing worse and worse as the season has gone on. It feels like they lost Tank Dell last time against the Kansas City Chiefs, and that was the guy that was doing most of the damage to the Chiefs defense. But after they lost Tank Dell, the offense didn't look the same. They weren't able to do anything. And that was probably the best the Chiefs offense has looked in a game so far this year, probably until that Steelers game. Yeah, they also looked pretty good in that one. But that was probably the best the Chiefs offense looked. And it still felt like, Michael, in the second half, they pulled back a little bit once we got to see what Hollywood Brown could do healthy, what Xavier Worthy is capable of doing now that he has some more experience under his belt. And DeAndre Hopkins, too, we're now at the end of the regular season, and he played, less than 60% of the snaps, which was the stipulation in that trade. So now there's no draft pick that the Chiefs could possibly give up that's more valuable from D-Hop playing more snaps. He can play all the snaps for the rest of the postseason, and he would still fall under the threshold for that trade of the Chiefs giving up a 4th-round pick. So it remains a 5th-round pick. I think we saw what DeAndre Hopkins can do in his first game. Well, the first game was that Raiders game, but that was on 3 days of practice. His first real game was that, I think, was it the Buccaneers game on prime time, and he showed what he can do. Is either the Saints or the Buccaneers? I can't remember off the top of my head.
It was the Bucs.
I thought so. But he showed what he can do, and the Chiefs were like, okay, now we're just going to kind of hide him away for the rest of the regular season. Now they're are fully rested. They've had almost a month of rest to this point. They've had all this time to prepare for the Houston Texans, a potential opponent that they knew that they could face again. and you just rolled them, last month. I think this is a great matchup for the Kansas City Chiefs. And once again, the best possible realistic scenario for the Chiefs in the divisional round.
And honestly, Josh, I feel like this is going to work out so well because let's just say hypothetically, the Steelers beat the Ravens in that AFC North matchup. You get to play the Steelers. That means that the Buffalo Bills would have to play the Texans or the Chargers, and that would have just gone south very quickly. Having those two teams beat up on each other is going to help this Chiefs team if they do advance to the AFC Championship game, and that is a very good thing. And again, you talked about it. We just match up so well with this Texans team. Offensively, they put up, 27 points against the Texans defense in that first matchup that was early on in December. And so I look at this Chiefs team, and I feel like they're coming off of so much rest. They're going to be prepared, and they're going to be ready to go out in this game and execute against a Texans team that I would say is playing on borrowed time. It kind of feels like they won a very emotional game at home against the Chargers. DeMeco Ryans had his team fired up in the locker room after it, saying, did they enjoy their bye week? A lot of people, including myself, did not expect the Houston Texans to win and advance to the next round. They're kind of in a situation where it's like, okay, everybody else is hurt. We finally won a playoff game. I guess they won last year, but we beat the Chargers. We proved to be a team that could win a playoff game. This kind of feels like the highlight of their season, and it feels like next week they're going to kind of ride off into the sunset. And I think the Chiefs are just going to be the better football team in this game.
You could say that the Texans are playing with house money in this game because they've had some key injuries on both sides of the ball. Kind of lucky to be here, and the Chargers were also, they chargered. Let's be honest. That's what
Chargers charger, man.
The Chargers charger. Justin Herbert, he threw 3 interceptions the entire season, Michael, and then threw 4 interceptions against the Texans in that playoff game. Justin Herbert is a fraud, I will tell you. I just made a video about that. You guys can check it out afterwards. But, I don't know. Man, if Justin Herbert doesn't win a playoff game by next season, it's going to get real bad over there. But, the Chargers chargered, and that's why the Texans are advancing. You do have to give their defense a little bit of credit, though, because, that is a nasty unit. They got a good defensive line. They got a good pass rush. You're going to have to watch that with the Chiefs' offensive line and some of the uncertainties that still lie within that. We assume that it's going to be Joe Thuney, but it sounds like they're going to try DJ Humphries at left tackle, at least in practice leading up to the game. We'll see what happens there. If you can get a healthy DJ Humphries that looks good and you could move Joe Thuney back at left guard, I guess that would be ideal. But, Michael, I know you and I both agree that you probably just kind of have to play the hot hand, and right now that's Joe Thuney. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Especially when you saw the results of Joe Thuney at left tackle less than a month ago against this very same team. Why are the Chiefs going to potentially outsmart themselves or overthink this and, play DJ Humphries at left tackle? Now, I have seen, some stuff saying that the Chiefs would give more help to DJ Humphries if he was the starting left tackle. They would chip with the running back. They would give him more help blocking with the tight end, which I think would make him better. But, I don't want to rely on the health of DJ Humphries in the playoffs when he's played 2 football games in a year and a half, and he couldn't stay healthy and play the remainder of one of them. So I feel like Joe Thuney's durability should be the main reason why he does get the start. But I also want to give a shout out to everybody in the chat. Chiefs Blitz, Lego My Ego, it's good to see you. Frank, even though you're not a Chiefs fan. John, it's good to see you as well. And Cole in the chat as well. So I feel like the Chiefs are in a situation going into this Texans game where if they go out and even play half of their game, they're going to win because the Texans are a team that capitalized on the Chargers' 4 turnovers, the pick 6, and Justin Herbert, for lack of a better term, shitting himself. And that's why they won. Watching that game, I watched the entirety of that game. The first half was ugly, and the Texans did not look good offensively until C.J. Stroud botched a snap, had it roll behind him. He picked it up and then hit Nico Collins down the field for that massive gain. After that, their offense looked serviceable. But before that, man, it was really bad. And that's a kind of situation where if the Chiefs are playing, they could be up by 14 points at that point in time.
Yeah, I do want to bring up this other comment from Chiefs Blitz as well. He says Pat would have been on the floor a few times against Houston if they didn't implement the quick passing game. And I definitely agree with that. I also want to mention this again, Michael, we talked about this on your channel, but something that gets overlooked, everyone is hyping up the young cornerback duo of Kamari Lassiter and Derek Stingley of the Texans right now. And those two have been great, no doubt about it. But if you go back to that Houston Texans matchup, Xavier Worthy had a day going up against those guys. Hollywood Brown did very well early in that game in his first game back. You're going to see quick passes, trying to take advantage of those corners that the Chiefs actually match up well against. And that's not even talking about DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Kelce, who I think are going to be unleashed in the postseason because that's what those guys are here for. They're here for that playoff run. And we saw something similar with Travis Kelce last year where the regular season was kind of slow for him. He didn't have that very many big games. Then the playoffs come. And man, he's productive. He turns the clock back. So you're going to be looking out for that. My main thing with DJ Humphries, though, I think we agree once again that a healthy DJ Humphries that's not rusty is the best option at left tackle. But it might not be the safest. And another reason why I'm skeptical of DJ Humphries at left tackle is because he has zero chemistry with the offensive line and he has zero chemistry with Patrick Mahomes because he only played in that one Chargers game, didn't even finish the game. And we know that it takes tackles a while to get used to that Patrick Mahomes drop back. It's not the same as playing with Carson Wentz, who DJ Humphries played with, I should say, in that Denver Broncos game in the last week of the regular season. It takes time, and they have not had the time to build that rapport. So that is my concern with DJ Humphries potentially starting at left tackle. But if Patrick Mahomes says to Coach Reid, hey, I'm comfortable with DJ Humphries at left tackle, then I guess you just have to roll with that.
Which our friend of the show, Chiefs Blitz, actually told me via direct message that the plan is that DJ Humphries is going to get the majority of the snaps at left tackle in practice this week. So it seems like the Chiefs are leaning in that direction, which I'm not going to fault them for because at the end of the day, DJ Humphries plays left tackle. This is what he came into the NFL as. Joe Thuney's been great in a pinch, but moving him out there, has always been a risk. And I will say, the interior offensive line has taken a little bit of a beating. They have not been able to run the ball to that left side. You've seen Mike Caliendo not be so great in run blocking and in pass protection. It's been serviceable, but you were better when Joe Thuney was at left guard. Now, I will say, I watched the All-22 film, and I'm not Seth Kaiser. He knows how to break down film in a way that I don't, but I did watch it, and it seemed like Humphries had his most trouble when the edge rusher would line up the furthest outside. He was having trouble getting to his spots, and he also struggled with, the hands of some of those Broncos defenders where he would just get beat with, I can't remember if it was Benito's hands, but on that quick inside move where he would use his hands to get inside leverage, that is where DJ Humphries struggled. And maybe he wouldn't have struggled if Joe Thuney was in there at left guard to kind of help him out there. That is something worth noting.
Yeah, and as Chiefs Blitz says in the comments, if something goes wrong, you can just slide Thuney back outside. It's something that you can try. But I think at the end of the day, ultimately, Joe Thuney has been playing the best left tackle play that we've seen out of any of the options so far this year for KC. So I think you got to roll with that in that playoff game. But we'll see, man. I mean, they're going to try him out at practice, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, anything's possible, but it seems like they're going to lean towards the left tackle. And so I'm going to trust, former offensive lineman Andy Reid to make the right call.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Now, my question for you, Michael, is what area, and maybe it's the pass rush, maybe we just kind of talked about it, but what area of this Texans team does concern you the most? Or is there anything about the Houston Texans coming into Arrowhead for a playoff game that scares you in the slightest?
I do have a couple concerns. I do think that Lassiter's a very good cornerback, and Stingley, I mean, he was just named All-Pro. I will say, they were talking about it on the broadcast, how Lassiter didn't really have that many interceptions. That might have been his first interception in the postseason all season yesterday. But I will say, there's a reason why opponents throw at Lassiter and not Stingley because Stingley's the better corner. But I feel like one of my biggest concerns is Azeez Al-Shaair. I'm really scared that he's just going to pop one of our wide receivers and take him out of the game.
Or
He's
Mahomes
a dirty
on
player.
a run.
He's a very dirty player, and you have to take that into account. He punched Ladd McConkey yesterday after the tackle. Like, that's the kind of stuff that you have to expect with Shaair in the game. And, up front, I think it's a little bit naive to think that the Texans pass rush won't get home at least a couple of times, in this game. The question is going to be, can the Chiefs manage that? Is it going to be in a, crucial situation where it's 3rd down or 4th down? Probably not. But you have to think that pass rush with Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter are going to be able to get to Mahomes, at least a couple of times.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that. Now, I'm going to share my concerns here in a second, but for those of you that are here, because we have a very good crowd in here right now, those of you that are here, if you have any questions or comments about this Chiefs matchup with the Houston Texans in the divisional round of the AFC playoffs, leave them now and we will get to them, because after this, we are going to break down the rest of AFC wildcard weekend and talk about some of the other games that happen and what to expect from other potential Chiefs opponents.
And also, like this live stream, if you have not already done so.
Yes,
we're trying
please
to
do
grow the live audience. And so stay a while, hit the like button, subscribe to both of the channels if you haven't already, and leave your comments in the comment section. We want to make this as interactive as possible and talk about the Chiefs' upcoming matchup against the Texans.
Yeah, so definitely leave your comments and questions down below. Hit the like button because it gets us seen and allows more people to join us. But here's one of my concerns, and this is a concern that I have about every single playoff game, and that's Andy Reid. And Andy Reid is a great coach. We both agree. I love Andy Reid. He's one of the best offensive play designers in NFL history. Obviously, his resume speaks for itself, but man, there are just a few times a game in every single game, even in the playoffs, where Andy Reid calls something up, and it's just like, what are you thinking? Just point shaving that allows a team like the Houston Texans, who you should beat, to maybe sneak in a win or knock you off. Like, I want to feel like the stuff that we saw in the regular season is just, well, the regular season Chiefs, and we're not going to see that by the time the postseason comes around. But no. and everyone always acts like that, but I'm not so sure because, like, for example, that Buffalo Bills game in the playoffs last year in the divisional round at Buffalo, Mecole Hardman fumbled earlier in the game. They're in the red zone, a chance to go up by multiple scores on the Buffalo Bills, and they hand the ball off to Mecole Hardman again, and he fumbles again. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, Mecole Hardman cannot get the ball there. Something that we've seen this season several times here in the latter half of the season, Michael, is short yardage. You need a couple yards. They hand the ball off to Isaiah Pacheco in short yardage, and he gets stuffed. Not once, but twice on the same exact play, when that should have been Kareem Hunt in short yardage, and Kareem Hunt is obviously this team's short yardage back. In a situation like that against the Houston Texans, is Andy going to make the right decision? Is he going to hand it off to Kareem Hunt in the red zone when they need a first down? They decide to go for it on 4th down. That could be, something that ends up being a 14-point swing in a game like this. That is something that concerns me, because this Texans team, although flawed, has a good enough quarterback, has good enough weapons, can create turnovers where something could potentially happen if you're not up for the task. You have to rise to the occasion. I said in your video, Michael, that we did on your channel, like, this has Chiefs win written all over it, because this is a team that you beat handily less than a month ago. They're injured all over. It's in Arrowhead. They're relatively inexperienced, but sometimes you can get a little too comfortable and things can happen. So that's my concern about this game.
I understand that. And I understand, we're still a little bit scarred from the old Chiefs days where, the Chiefs would choke in the playoffs year after year after year. You want to go back to the Tennessee Titans, or even in the Mahomes era against the Bengals, they should not have lost that football game. And so I understand the cause to be concerned, but I will say that I feel like this Chiefs team is different, and they have a goal, they have a mission, and they're also just incredibly experienced. the Chiefs team that lost to the Bengals, that's the last time the Chiefs lost in the playoffs. Oh my gosh. But the last time the Chiefs lost in the playoffs, they didn't have the current group that won back-to-back Super Bowls. They didn't have a team that, went 11-6 in the regular season and found a way to turn it on in the postseason. They didn't have that type of experience back then. And so I feel like I might be the most confident that I've ever been in a Chiefs team to at least win the first game and get to the AFC Championship game, especially after watching what Houston did in the first, half of that game, because they could not run the ball in the first half. The offensive line, the interior was really bad. And so I really don't think that the Texans are going to be able to find that same success offensively that they found against the Chargers, because, the Chargers turned the ball over so much and gave the Texans so many opportunities that I don't expect the Chiefs to give.
I think a lot of this matchup also depends on the health of Jalen Watson and where he's at. He's been designated to return from IR, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to play in this game. Now, I think we can expect to see him back at some point this postseason, but will that be this game? If it is, the matchup gets a lot easier because this Chiefs defense has been a different unit with Jalen Watson out on the field. That has been made clear. We've seen other teams take advantage of that Najee Johnson, Joshua Williams matchup, even including the Texans in that matchup last month. If you have Najee Johnson instead, it allows Trent McDuffie to move back in the slot where he's naturally very good. And then you have Jalen Watson on the outside. Now, it would also be a lot more helpful if the Texans still had Tank Dell, which they don't, which makes it even easier for the Chiefs if they can get Jalen Watson back.
Yeah, but even then, you put Trent McDuffie on Nico Collins and you plug up the run with Joe Mixon and John Mechie? You think John Mechie's going to beat who outside of Nico Collins and Joe Mixon are going to beat this Chiefs team offensively? I mean, maybe Dalton Schultz. I don't know.
Deontay Johnson, who they just picked up, but he hasn't been there for very long.
Deontay Johnson's not going to play. I didn't see him at all on Saturday. Did he play?
I have no idea. Frank maybe be able to tell us in the comments down below. I didn't remember seeing him all that much.
The corpse of Robert Woods? Robert Woods is 45 years old. How old is Robert Woods? He did make a couple good catches, though, in yesterday's game. So
he's been around for a while. But yeah, no, I see what you mean about the Texans just not having as many options as it seems without Tank Dell. And also CJ Stroud, he had some questionable decisions and throws in that game as well that I think this Chiefs defense, or this Chiefs team, can take advantage of, that the Chargers weren't able to, because the Chargers always charger in these types of situations.
Yeah, I feel like this is a fantastic analogy. This is a lot like the Jacksonville Jaguars team.
Yeah, I was going to, yeah.
In that playoff run where they beat the Chargers, they came back from 28 to nothing or something like that. They came back, made this wild, postseason comeback, and then everyone's like, oh, the Jags are going to go into Arrowhead and beat the Chiefs. The Chiefs, I believe, had the bye week. They did actually in 2022. And so everyone thought that, the Jags were going to come into Arrowhead and upset the Chiefs. And that was a game that was really never in question. The Chiefs also played Jacksonville late in the year, and I think Shire was actually on that Jaguars team. So there's a lot of similarities between the 2022 Jacksonville Jaguars playoff run and the Houston Texans playoff run.
Well, and they also, Michael, I think it's important to note that they beat them with Patrick Mahomes on a bad ankle and Chad Henne led a touchdown drive.
Yeah. That's what happened in that game. And that was a very well coached, Jacksonville Jaguars team that had Trevor Lawrence playing really good football. And if you want to go down the offensive weapons that Jaguars team had at the time, we're talking was Calvin Ridley active for that game? I'm pretty sure he was.
Yeah. And Christian Kirk and
yes,
tight end whose name escapes me at the moment, Evan Ingram, was playing very well that year. I don't know what ended up happening with that Jaguars team, why they've had such a fall from grace, but they were very dangerous at the time.
Yeah, no, it's a very similar situation that I think they're the most comparable because, the Chiefs are coming off all this rest. It feels like a team from the AFC South just got a hard-fought win against the Chargers at home, and it feels like history's repeating itself.
Yeah, no, I think that's the best situation to compare it to, and I think you can expect to see similar results. I think this will be a game that the Chiefs will win. Obviously, I'm picking the Chiefs to win, spoiler alert. But they match up very well against them. They just played them not long ago and showed that they could handle them rather easily, and that was without really opening up the offense much in the second half. So I'm confident.
I'm confident too, and I feel like if there wasn't a reason enough to be confident, the Chiefs are inevitable. Like, the Chiefs are one of those teams that every single year they will turn it on in the playoffs, and I feel like it's going to take a very strong effort from either the Ravens or the Bills to beat this team in the AFC Championship game. Now, I will say, I don't want to get overconfident. The last time I was overconfident was that 2021 AFC Championship game against the Bengals. I was like, there's no way the Chiefs lose at home in the AFC Championship game. Patrick Mahomes just completely forgets how to play football in the second half, and we lose. But I don't expect that to happen. This team is just different, and they've also proven over the past 2 postseason runs that you're going to have to go through 15. It doesn't matter if it's at home or on the road. This year it's at home, and they only have to win 1 game to get to the AFC Championship game. And in a 1-game scenario, who are you putting your money on? Because if you say the Texans, you're lying.
Yeah, that's kind of how I look at it, man. If you were to put money on one of these teams, you're putting money on Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, especially in the divisional round. This team does not lose in the divisional round. They never have with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. So
it's kind of like how the Bills are wild card merchants. Like, they win every single year in the wild card round. They'll beat the shit out of the 7 seed or just some lowly team that sneaks their way into the playoffs. And then when it comes time to like play in the divisional round, they're like, I think they're like 3 or maybe it's like 1-3 or something like that. And then the AFC Championship game, they're 0-1. So like, after this round is when it gets real. And you've seen historically the Bills have fallen off. The Ravens haven't been as good. And so like, I feel like the Chiefs are just in such a good position. And the bracket, I think, did pan out because, listen, if Denver found a way to go into Buffalo and beat the Buffalo Bills, which after that first offensive drive, I was like, oh, buckle up. Bo Nix is cooking right now. That was the only touchdown that they would score. But like, you know, if Buffalo did end up losing today, the Denver Broncos would not have been a favorable matchup and not been a matchup that I was like, ooh, I'm excited to play this team.
Yeah, well, let's jump into it. Well, actually, real quick, I did want to answer this comment from Utah Mountain Family. He says, what do you think about Harrison Butker and how he's been missing kicks? We did talk about that on a recent live stream. Yeah, I mean, it's a concern. I don't think it'll be a concern in this game, but as the postseason goes on, yeah, Butker needs to start making his kicks because if you look at last postseason, they needed every single Butker kick that they got. And he's been missing the kicks that he typically makes as of recently, and I don't know what's going on. I feel like that whole injury situation, they never really told the truth about that, and I don't think he's fully healed, and I don't know. It feels a lot more 50-50 than it's usually been with Harrison Butker and field goals.
It feels like the Chiefs are in a position where they're confident in Harrison Butker, even though he's struggled as of late. You know, I read off the stats when we were talking about this originally. He's 8 of 9 on PATs, and he's 3 of 5 from field goals. And the one that he missed was that really ugly, like 31-yarder. I can't remember which game it was in. And then he missed that one against the Broncos. But I feel like you kind of have to trust Harrison in this situation. He's played a lot of playoff games. He's made a lot of really big kicks. And for what it's worth, he has never missed a big kick. Now, I don't want this to be the first time, but like when we're talking about players that really turn it on when it really matters, Harrison Butker is one of those guys. There was, I think in 2022, Josh, this is exactly what happened in 2022. Harrison Butker got hurt in week 1. Everyone was freaking out. He came back from injury. He wasn't any good. And, you know, everyone was freaking out. And then come playoff time, he makes big kicks in the AFC Championship game and the Super Bowl. I cannot believe the parallels between this team and the team from 2022 that won it. And I think that's a good sign. And really quickly, I do want to address Frank's comment. I'm going to try to get 713 Sports on a podcast. He's also affiliated with Roundtable Sports. So hopefully we'll get a Texans-Chiefs collab here coming up this week. But yeah, no, it's kind of crazy how these two teams are just very, similar to what they've been over the past couple seasons.
Well, and if they are anything like that 2022 team, that would be a pretty good indication that they can win the Super Bowl because, well, they won the Super Bowl in 2022. It's kind of crazy how it is connected like that, though. But with all that being said, I want to get back to where you were leading the conversation before that. So Broncos versus Bills. Let's talk about that game a little bit, kind of break down the rest of the AFC. So I really think where the Broncos lost any chance of upsetting the Bills was when they missed that field goal right before the first half. It's like, if you're going to pull off the upset, you have to make the field goal there. You have to make it a tie game at halftime. It just kind of felt like their confidence was shot after that. And the Bills were like, okay, you missed your chance. Now we're going to capitalize. We've been in this situation before. And then they just scored and scored and scored. And then the Broncos also had that awful unnecessary roughness penalty hit on a defenseless receiver. And just nothing went right for them after that. But there was a moment where you thought, oh, man, the Broncos, can they actually do this? Bo Nix looks really good. We talked about that, Michael, in some of our other videos from last week, how this defense for the Bills has not been playing their best football lately and that maybe Bo Nix could take advantage of that matchup. But look, what you saw was a rookie quarterback in his first playoff game on the road, and he didn't do some of the same things that we saw him do in the regular season because it's just a bigger stage, man, and you need that experience.
Yeah, and listen, I feel like Sean Payton kind of let Bo Nix down a little bit. They kept trying to run the football when they could not run the football. And so, that's on him. The defensive coordinator completely, falling apart with his defensive scheme, that's on him. Pat Surtain completely just whiffing on that, touchdown, that's on him. You can look at a bunch of different plays in that game where you're like, oh, the Broncos just lost this game. The missed field goal at the end of the half, that touchdown on 4th and 1 where, Josh Allen somehow, some way completed that pass to the guy in the back of the end zone. And, it just seemed like Denver looked really good for a half. And then after that, they just lost all momentum and all confidence. And that's kind of to be expected with a very young team, a team that doesn't have a ton of talent on it. They kind of superseded expectations this year. And, they went down to one of the best teams in the NFL. And so, I think the only shame in this game, if you're a Broncos fan, is that your team kind of laid down and died in the fourth quarter when they should have at least played for pride at that point. I wish the game would have been closer.
I kind of wonder, and we touched on this after that Week 18 game, Chiefs and Broncos. I wonder if Sean Payton emptying the bag, playing his starters for the entire game, even although they had the game won after the first quarter, maybe came back to hurt them in this one, and the Bills just had their number ready to go. Because Sean Payton, because you mentioned how he tried running the ball, and he said at halftime, even after halftime in the interview with, I think it was Tracy Wolfson, sideline reporter, we're trying to win the time of possession battle. And the Bills knew that. And that's also how they beat the Chiefs in Week 18 was they dominated time of possession. They had the ball for 42 minutes in that game. And the Bills are like, yeah, we're not letting you do that. And they just, there was no adapting to that game plan from the Bills.
Buffalo ran the ball down Denver's throat in a way that I did not think was possible. I mean, listen, I came into this game thinking, oh, the Broncos front four is stacked. They can get to the quarterback. They didn't really get to Josh Allen. They did get to him a couple times, but they also couldn't stop James Cook. And so it's like, if you can't stop James Cook, you can't stop Josh Allen in big plays, what chance do you have of beating this team? And they still had a chance in the first half to tie this game, to go into the half 10-10. And after that, doink field goal that he missed, it seemed like that was it for Denver. And they came out of the locker room. What was the time of possession in that game? Because it looked really bad. I'm going to look it up really quickly.
I can get it for you right now. The Denver Broncos Yeah, this is exactly what happened in Week 18 with the Broncos, except the opposite. It happened to them. The Bills had the ball for 41 minutes and 43 seconds to the Broncos 18 minutes and 17 seconds. The exact thing that the Broncos did to the Chiefs. Yeah, they got to taste of their own medicine in this one. They wanted to win that time of possession. Buffalo said, nope, not happening. And they won the time of possession by ramming the ball down their throats. Josh Allen making the throws that he needed to make and just capitalizing, man, on their opportunities.
Yeah, I just felt like Denver was a little bit outmatched. I don't think that the Chiefs in that situation would struggle to get Buffalo off the field at least that many times. I mean, you want to look at third down after third down that Buffalo completed. The Chiefs are getting a couple of those. So it's just like, I feel like Denver was a young team that got in this position, kind of playing with house money. We shouldn't be here, rookie quarterback. They just realistically, they had a shot to, upset the Bills if Bo Nix played well, if Sean Payton had this offense playing well. The harsh reality is that they're too young. The receivers dropped way too many passes. Their defense couldn't stop the run. And, Pat Surtain, who's supposedly one of the best cornerbacks in football, he looked like a, revolving door today. So it's just like, I feel like they're, a little too early to be, competing for a Super Bowl, but they looked good, to get into the playoffs, but, they're not a, Super Bowl contender.
No, so like looking at it from the flip side, the Buffalo Bills perspective, have your feelings changed at all after watching Buffalo kind of shred Denver's defense the way they did? Because I thought if the Broncos were going to have a chance to upset the Bills, it was going to be because of their defense, and Josh Allen just kind of shut down any hopes of that. I also saw a little bit of conversation on Twitter. Some Chiefs fans were fighting over whether we should be rooting for the Broncos or the Bills in this one, because some just kind of live by the fact you can't cheer for the Denver Broncos, division rival, like no way. But like the way I look at it, I'm not rooting for the Denver Broncos. I'm just rooting for the best possible path to the Super Bowl for the Chiefs. And so, yeah, I like I said earlier, like if I want the Bills to drop out, I would also want the Ravens to drop out, because if it's not going to be both of them, then you don't want the other one to have a super easy path to the AFC Championship. You want the Bills and the Ravens to beat up on each other. But I will say this, if one of them had to drop out, I would want it to be the Buffalo Bills, because I think Josh Allen is the only quarterback in the AFC that is capable of outplaying Patrick Mahomes in a playoff game.
I was so torn because I went into this game. I mean, I've got, the Broncos connection with the AFC West roundtable that I do. I was just like, it would be nice to see Denver win because then the Bills are out. But at the same time, like, I don't want to root for a divisional rival to win. But like, I think we saw the best outcome happen because listen, if Denver would have won, we would have played Denver, we would have beat Denver, and then the Ravens would have played the Texans. And we saw that game less than a month ago. And that game was about as ugly as I've seen a football game this season. And so now we get to see the Bills and the Ravens beat up on each other. One of those teams is going to get eliminated. You're not going to have to face both Buffalo and Baltimore. And so I feel like for Josh Allen to have to, play Lamar Jackson, for Lamar Jackson to have to go into Buffalo, you're going to have to get rid of one of those very good teams. It's not like one of those teams is just going to have a cakewalk to the AFC Championship game where the Chiefs have a considerably easier matchup. And I think that so we probably saw, the best case scenario happen.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. But I did want to bring it back to that question real quick. So like, do you think, or have your feelings changed at all on the Buffalo Bills as a potential? No, you're fine, because I totally get why you took it that way. But have your feelings changed at all on the Buffalo Bills as a potential playoff opponent?
No, I feel like I expect them to be a tough out. I expect them to be able to move the ball, offensively. I also think that, Denver's defense wasn't they don't have the experience of beating the Bills. So it's just like they were going to get outmanned. They were going to get, kind of exposed by Josh Allen because they don't have the necessary pieces and also the scheme to beat Josh Allen. Steve Spagnuolo has shown that in the playoffs, he has the recipe for beating Josh Allen. And so I don't think that my perspective really changed on, the the Buffalo Bills and how good they are. I will say my perspective did change on another team. We're probably going to talk about that here soon.
Well, let's get into it because I was going to talk about the Ravens playoff game next. They took on the Pittsburgh Steelers, obviously. That one felt like the easiest pick of the weekend because the Steelers just the Steelers are becoming that team in the postseason where it's like, oh, awesome. This is basically a bye week in the playoffs. Because I know the Chiefs faced them a couple years back in the 2021 postseason and just ran through them. I remember TJ Watt had like a strip sack touchdown or something like that. And then after that, the Chiefs just scored like 40 points unanswered or something like that. The quarterback disparity was always too large. Russell Wilson's not doing anything. Mike Tomlin almost kind of did like a fake out where he's like, I think I might put in Justin Fields. Okay, no, I'm not. I'm going to stick with Russell Wilson. And then they had that touchdown to George Pickens that looked like might make it interesting, but then the Ravens immediately answered back. The Steelers defense didn't even look like they were trying. Derrick Henry had a touchdown run where he was essentially untouched, even though the Ravens had like 7 guys chasing him. Yeah, I mean, that one went about as expected. That was probably the worst playoff game of the weekend as well.
I'm not going to lie, Josh. I turned that game off at halftime. When the Ravens went up 21-0, I was like, okay, I've seen enough. The Steelers have struggled to score over 19 points for the past, month and a half. They lost their last 4 games. I was like, this is going to get horrendous. This is like watching a war crime happen in front of you. Like, this is not going to be an entertaining game to watch in the second half. And so I didn't really pay attention in the second half. Obviously, they kind of made a little bit of a run, but
it was interesting for about 2 seconds.
Pittsburgh's one of those teams that you shouldn't take seriously because they never have a capable and competent quarterback when it truly matters. And you saw that game, I think it was back in 2021 where the Chiefs played them. And
yeah, that's what I was just talking about, where TJ Watt had like a strip sack touchdown, and then the Chiefs scored like 30 unanswered.
I mean, it was ridiculous. And that was Big Ben's last ride. And so it was just kind of like they didn't have anything left in the tank then. And so I was never, really a big believer in the Pittsburgh Steelers. I thought that maybe there was a chance just because, AFC North matchup, weird stuff happens. But I mean, Baltimore just completely showed that they were the better team. And it almost looked like Pittsburgh gave up at one point. Like, oh my gosh, they're down by so much. The defense was tired. The offense, like, how many times can you have Russell Wilson drop back and throw a prayer downfield? Like, how many times? Like, that's what their offense was. It was like, we're going to have Russell Wilson throw the ball 30 yards downfield. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And that's on Mike Tomlin. Like, why is Mike Tomlin not having a better game plan against a team that you've historically beaten? And I just think that, this game was kind of doomed from the start, but, Russ was not cooking in this game.
No, he was not. But the Ravens and Lamar Jackson, I mean, they look dangerous on the ground as always, but if you look at the track record of primarily running quarterbacks in the postseason, it's just not all that great. Jalen Hurts had that one really good year with the Eagles super team, and obviously they gave Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs a good fight in the Super Bowl, but outside of that, it has not been smooth sailing for Lamar Jackson, the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I assume, Michael, that's the team that you insinuated you wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
So looking at this from the Ravens' point of view, how much of a chance do you give them versus a team like Buffalo, and like, how do you feel about them?
My thought process this entire postseason has been that Baltimore's defense is horrendous. I don't think that they have a good defense. I think that you're going to see that probably in this next week, that, when you go up against a quarterback that can put up points, a premier team, they're not going to have the defense that's going to be able to do it. And so I think that's going to be the game of the week next week. Baltimore versus Buffalo. It's in Buffalo. I feel like even though the Ravens are one of those teams that every year they seem fraudulent, this year it's a little bit different because they didn't get away from running the football. When they run the football with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, they're a very scary team. And historically, last year the Chiefs beat them because they ran the ball 6 times in the AFC Championship game. Baltimore got away from their identity, and that's why they lost. And I think that they have to get away from their identity if they get punched in the mouth and they start trailing, because that's when they start to panic. But if Baltimore is able to run the football like they did against the Steelers, which I'm not going to say that, Baltimore looks unbeatable because they did beat Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh, I think the Chiefs could have beaten Pittsburgh with Carson Wentz. That's how bad I think this, Steelers team is. But I do think that you saw in that game that the Ravens can run the ball. And if they run the ball, like they did against the Steelers, they're going to give anybody a tough matchup. And I don't know if Buffalo, with that defense, is going to be able to hold them to under 25 points.
That's interesting. Yeah, so this Ravens team, no matter the players they bring in, it kind of feels like the game plan is always the same. Get up on them early, build up that lead, get them out of their running habits, and force Lamar to throw, and your odds of winning are pretty good. And the Chiefs even did that in week 1. Now, these are two different teams from week 1 of the NFL season, but the Chiefs did that. They were up by 10 at one point in the fourth quarter, and Lamar had to start chucking it, and it just was not enough to win that game. Now, of course, Isaiah Likely, he was inches away from potentially tying that game, but
womp womp.
Well, that's not the way
every week.
But my point is, that's not, it was still a loss for them, and Lamar Jackson missed some wide open throws in that game that if he had converted, maybe the result would have been different. Because remember, a couple plays before that, it might have been the play right before, Zay Flowers was wide open in the back of the end zone, and Lamar just threw it out of the back of the end zone, into the first row of the stands. And it's come on, man. These are the plays that you have to make for your team to take that next step to get over the hump. And I just don't know, the Ravens can do whatever in the regular season. They can do what they did against the Steelers and look awesome running the ball. And it doesn't really change the way I feel about them if they were to match up with the Kansas City Chiefs. But I do think they have a good chance of knocking off Buffalo because they did exactly that earlier on. I believe, I'm pretty sure the Ravens won that game. Correct.
Yes, they smoked them.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. So they do have the potential to do that. And I think their offense is actually good enough to take advantage of Buffalo's porous defense. So I'll be excited to see who comes out of this one. I'm kind of hoping for the Ravens because I think that's an easier matchup for the Chiefs. Like I said, Josh Allen is the one quarterback, in the AFC that I feel like can outplay Patrick Mahomes in the playoff game. So give me the Ravens, and I do think the Ravens have a solid shot of winning this game.
Yeah, which honestly might be best case scenario, because very early on in my content creating journey, this was 2019 AFC Championship game, I remember talking about if the Chiefs defense could stop Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry at the time was just a madman. He's a Hall of Famer. He is just fantastic. And he's really taken another jump with this Ravens offense. But I remember talking about how I thought the Chiefs defense could shut down Derrick Henry, stop him. And that's what they did in that AFC Championship game. And you've seen over the past couple of years that when the Chiefs go up against a very good rushing team, whether it's CMC in the Super Bowl, whether it is, Derrick Henry in an AFC Championship game, historically, they have shown that they will stop that and force the quarterback to throw. And so that's why I think it'd be best case scenario that you make, Lamar Jackson throw the ball in the AFC Championship game, because if that's the case, if it's Mahomes throwing the ball versus Mahomes throwing the ball versus Lamar Jackson throwing the ball, we know how that's going to play out. But Josh Allen's someone that can not only throw the ball a mile, he can hurdle a guy. He can make stuff happen with his legs. And so that's why, I think that Baltimore's probably the better matchup. But that's also why I think that Baltimore is going to have really good success against Buffalo's defense, because they can run the football. And I feel like they could, put this position where Buffalo is down early, and then we'll see who panics more.
Yeah, so I like your breakdown right there. Now, I'm about ready to wrap up this AFC wildcard weekend recap. But, Michael, so I think both of us already know, we're not doing our preview yet or anything like that.
No.
But both of us know that we're probably picking the Chiefs against the Houston Texans. So Assuming that happens, though I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves because, anything can happen. It's the NFL, it's the playoffs, but we do like the Chiefs in that game. So let's just assume that happens, just for the sake of the conversation.
Hypotheticals.
Yes. Who are you picking? Actually, I'll ask two different questions. Who are you picking to come out of the Bills-Ravens game? And is that different from who you want to come out of the Bills-Ravens game?
No. I feel like I predicted this when I did my NFL playoff predictions. I think that Baltimore can go into Buffalo and beat them. I'm just very, very wary of Buffalo's defense. I don't think they're very good. I think they could get exposed against a better offense. And, Josh Allen has historically struggled in the divisional round. This could be a very 2022-esque, divisional round where the Bengals beat the Bills in Buffalo in a snowy game. This could be a situation where, Baltimore goes into Buffalo, they run the football down their throats, they make that defense work, and, Josh Allen's not going to be able to do enough to overcompensate for his poor defense. So I think that Baltimore is going to go into Buffalo and beat them. It's going to be close. It's going to be ugly. I think they're going to run the football really well on both sides, but whose defense is better? This is a situation where I think Baltimore's got the upper hand. This is MVP candidate versus MVP candidate. And I think the guy that ends up winning MVP is probably going to win this game.
So you think Lamar is going to win the MVP?
I do. Because he was first in all-pro voting. And I think that the guy that usually wins first team all-pro usually gets the MVP.
Interesting. I feel like it's going to go to Josh Allen still.
I hope it does. I hope
they might give Lamar Offensive Player of the Year and then Josh Allen the MVP, because usually the Offensive Player of the Year is the runner-up to the MVP. But we'll see what happens. I like it though. I like your prediction. I get the rationale. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up the AFC wildcard weekend recap there. Divisional round matchup is set. The Chiefs will take on the Houston Texans at Arrowhead in the divisional round. One more game and you're right back in the AFC Championship. But with all that being said, guys, make sure you leave down in the comments below what your initial thoughts are on the Chiefs matching up with the Houston Texans in the divisional round of the AFC playoffs. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. And Michael, before we go, where can the people find you for those of you that are watching on my side?
You guys can find me on YouTube at KC Sports Report. If you guys enjoy these live streams, hit the like button on this stream and also comment down below. We want to do this more, especially going into the playoffs. We're going to try to create a ton of content in the next week. Hopefully I'll get a Texans fan on, and so we'll get that perspective. But if you guys like these live streams with Josh and I, hit the like button on this stream and also subscribe to both of our channels.
There you guys have it, and all of Michael's stuff will be down in my description as always. As for me, you can check out my work on showmefootball.com, arrowheadaddict.com. Follow me on Twitter at showmefb. That's all we got for you guys in this one. We'll see you in the next one. And as always, go Chiefs.
What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Noah Gray here, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Josh's channel and check out showmefootball.com for more.